And yeah, we are live and recording.
All right. Shall we go? Shall we do it?
You guys are about to hear me do my intro live, which is very nerve-wracking. I never thought I would have to do it in front of people, but here we are. Hello and welcome back to A Stark Contrast, where we discuss the differences and similarities from Marvel Comics to their MCU counterparts. And we are your hosts, Jeffrey.
And I.
Hello.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for stopping by. Yes, we are A Stark Contrast. This is our very first live recording, for the record. So thank you for stopping by and sitting in to listen to our show. So generally, like Jeff just said, each episode of our podcast centralizes on one Marvel character, and we compare the comic book version to the cinematic version because in many cases they're not nearly the same. Sometimes they're like dead on. Gamora is a great one that's pretty spot on.
Yeah, that we just did. Go and listen to that. We just did that.
And then there are, of course, other characters like Gwen Stacy and Kamala Khan. They're a little different here and there, but if any of those characters interest you, please go back, listen to it. We're about 56 episodes deep.
Yeah.
So we're with no stopping.
Yeah. Should we just intro like a little bit like how we started this? Like,
maybe.
You and me. I know we were talking about it earlier.
Yeah.
But how Di and I started this podcast is super incredibly random.
Yeah.
I love watching MCU movies and have for the last since 2008, but really started picking it up in like 2014.
Yeah.
And every time I would watch one in about after 2014, I would text Di every time after every movie and be like, "Who is this? Like, what is this? How is this significant?" And we would talk every single Marvel movie. And
I'm the go-to nerd.
Yeah.
So if you got a question,
and then it just got to a point of like,
yeah,
should we just like do a podcast to just talk about it?
It's
like
all you.
just for fun, just as nerds nerding out, as we say in our podcast. Because I don't really have a platform, not platform, but I don't have too many friends that are just as like enthusiastic.
He's being nice. He doesn't want to say that he has no nerd friends like me.
The way that I love talking about it, and I was really happy to still be really cool and friends with Di that we can.
Yeah.
And that's how this came to fruition.
Yeah, and it was one of those things that during the lockdown, people were isolated. You weren't sure what to do with yourself, and so we started communicating the tail end of the worst of it. And my joke is that people were either baking bread or starting podcasts, and so I was a little bit of A and B. And because of this guy, it's all his doing. So I was like, okay, let's go. And we just got to it, and here we are.
Yeah.
At my day job. I actually work for the museum, but thankfully they were nice enough to actually consider our show. So here we are with all you lovely people.
Thank you.
So we're here for First Fridays, Fandoms and fantasy themed superheroes. This entire season has been wonderful. It's gone through dragons and lore and wizards, magic, and so here we are, the very last one, superheroes, all things superhero. And so we're going to talk a little bit about how superheroes as well as the museum come together in a unified form. And so, of course, the museum has tons of stuff happening all year round, so if you're so inclined, please keep up at nhm.org. It's part of my job to do that. So
just killing two birds with one stone here.
There you go. So let's dive into some notable NHMLA history.
Hey, everyone.
Oh, Peter.
Hey, sorry I'm late. It's a jungle out there. I had to beat an old lady with a stick to get these cranberries.
So if you've seen anything that's rotating on this little iPad here, you might recognize it. It's from Sam Raimi's Spider-Man from 2002, starring Tobey Maguire. And so I've encountered a few people that have actually come up to the table, recognized the film, because, Spider-Man is one of the most well-known superheroes, if not characters of all time. And so few people know that scene in the film was filmed here at the museum. And so if you go into the rotunda area, it's the area just left of this beautiful dino hall that we have. The ceiling is a stained glass ceiling. You can't miss it. There's a giant statue in the middle. That entire scene from Spider-Man, the opening, the pivotal part of the film, where Peter Parker gets
bitten by
the spider.
Spoiler alert,
here.
yeah.
It was filmed here. But before we get into all of that, let's get into some quick facts about the film. So the film, once again, directed by Sam Raimi. It was written by Stan Lee, Steve Ditko, and David Koepp, with music by Danny Elfman. So Stan and Steve, those are pretty familiar names, especially with our show. We've talked about them quite a bit. They're the OGs. They're the original creators when it came to Spider-Man. So the fact that those two men were involved in the film at all, I think, is part of what really made it as great as it was.
I actually didn't know that, like legitimately written by Stan Lee.
It says in the credits.
Part of the screenplay.
Yeah,
wow.
Exactly. And so they were part of the Amazing Spider-Man run, which we have one of the early issues here, number 50 from 1967. They were with the character throughout the course of their lifetimes. And so David Koepp came in and added the Hollywood element of written for film. And so he really contributed the big finesse of Hollywood and how it unraveled the story that is Peter Parker as Spider-Man, which we love. I think that's your number one film, isn't it? Or number one Spider-Man film.
Man's number one, the first one.
Yeah.
Yes, but Spider-Man 2 is definitely definitely up there.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely. And so that unfortunately was not filmed here, but we do have the luxury of talking about the first one. And so the museum itself served as the backdrop for Columbia University. So the funny thing is they shot exteriors on site at Columbia University, but when they came inside. It was here in LA. So,
of course,
movie magic.
Yeah, the beauty of filmmaking.
Yeah, exactly. And so, yeah, you'll see the scene rotating on the iPad here if you want to watch it again. It's kind of burned into my memory. I don't know how many times I've seen this movie.
I'm right up there with you. Yeah. I've seen it multiple times.
Easily 20 times,
just flipping
25.
through TV. I'm like, I'm going to watch it.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, let's
And
just
how old
finish
were
it.
you when it came out?
It came out in 2002, so I was...
A baby.
I was 8 years old.
Yeah, and imagine kids now, right? For instance, 8-year-olds that are going to see Across the Spider-Verse now.
Spoiled with Spider-Man content.
Yeah.
Spoiled.
Oh, man, I would have killed for it as a kid. And I say this a lot on the show. I drove my mom crazy because I was into Spider-Man and into the X-Men, and I liked Barbies, but I really love superheroes. But now kids get to dabble in Miles Morales and Gwen Stacy and Peter Parker.
Just so many different types of comic book characters.
The envy. I love it.
Yeah.
So we can talk a little bit about the rotunda itself. So did you look at this much at all?
Not much.
Okay. I love to test Jeff if he's looked ahead and cheated. But the rotunda itself was built in 1913. And that was the original entry for the museum itself. So all of this was built after the fact.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's kind of wild. So it served as the Beaux-Arts entrance, or even the Haga family rotunda. And so when the city was coming up and becoming the Los Angeles that we know now, it hadn't really started to spring up until the completion of the Los Angeles Aqueduct. So once that was completed, Los Angeles really became the city that we now know it to continuously be growing as it is. And so the rotunda itself was designed by local architects Frank Hudson and William A.D. Munsell. And so as the museum was growing and adding on to everything else, the original build was retained from its marble pillars to the stained glass ceiling, as we see now. And so, and as we've mentioned to a few people that have walked by, I can't even imagine the kind of care that went into that space as they were filming.
Yeah, because this is a lot.
Yeah.
Fun fact, this is, I think, my first time here.
No way, really?
I think this might be my first.
You're fired.
I've lived in LA my whole life. And to my memory, I don't remember walking through here.
What about La Brea tar pits? Maybe?
I probably have gone here on a class field trip, but that was like in middle school, elementary school, and it's all a blur because I was a kid. I didn't care about anything, but here I am.
You remembered Spider-Man, so...
Yeah, always. I care. I remember the things I care for. Yes, yes.
Got it. They didn't remove anything, which is the wild thing. They built around it. They added components, facades to the actual structure. And so they took this gigantic, from what I understand, they took this gigantic facade that was supposed to pose as a telescope or something.
Okay.
A lab thing, and they put it on top of the statue. and they ensured that they did not break or chip or scrape a single part of that statue, which is a feat, I think, because if you've ever seen it, and I've watched our wonderful, curators clean that statue, and it takes hours. It takes feather dusters, and you have to.
How often is it cleaned?
Oh, I can't remember what she said, but it's pretty regularly.
Okay.
And you have to be delicate with it. She has this wonderful apparatus that looks like a Ghostbuster machine. She calls it the Ghostbuster thing, and she has a vacuum hooked up to it, and you gotta go up on a ladder, and so you really have to take care of that piece of history because it's over 100 years old at this point.
That's crazy.
So Sam Raimi and his team plopped a giant facade on top of that statue for this initial 4 minutes of the film.
Oh.
So
you got to do what you got to do.
And now it's a part of history, as it is in Spider-Man history. So the ceiling itself, I wanted to shout out to Walter Horace Judson. He is the creator of the stained glass ceiling. And so that is also the original retained portion of the build. So be sure to look up. It's, all the beautiful stuff isn't just around you. You got to look up once in a while. And so the statue itself was designed by Julia Bracken Wendt, one of Los Angeles' first prominent sculptors, and it represents art, science, and history. So there are three female characters on the statue, and each one is looking in a different direction. They have their hands positioned in a certain way, and so it's representational of art, science, and history.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That. Yeah. So it's actually quite fitting that it was in Spider-Man, of all things, in a scientific scene that made history, and it's based on comic art.
Yeah.
Boom. Bingo card.
You always blow my mind with facts, Dai. Every time.
Where's my glasses? I got to push up my glasses. And so a few of the pictures that are on this slideshow here, I wanted to give a shout out to Thomas Duke. And so Thomas Duke is on Instagram known as Stepping Through Film. And so Thomas, I'm not sure where he actually lives, but he is one of those people that goes around the world, travels to different states, and he takes reference photographs of iconic historical Hollywood films. And so he has done it with so many films like Back to the Future, and he's done it with television shows like Gilmore Girls and Spider-Man as well. And I think he just did one for The Last of Us, which was kind of interesting.
Oh.
Because he even took a picture that was referencing the video game cover, which was like, he found a match that perfectly matched. Yeah, and he's one of those deep divers. So shout out to him, and be sure to take a look at his account because it's pretty fantastic. Yeah. And you never know what's actually in your proximity. You might have something in your backyard. You have no idea.
Yeah, we recreated that today a little bit.
We made a quick reel, and I had Jeff stand in where Tobey Maguire was standing. So if you want a good photo op, go over there and check it out.
Now I'm standing. You all happy? We're all standing up now. Bunch of jackasses standing in a circle.
So something that I love to put pressure on Jeff on our show is that we do pop quizzes. And let me tell you, our first episode ever, we covered all things Tony Stark and Iron Man, which is a very dense comic book history. This guy...
It's my proudest moment on the pod, I might say, and it's the first episode.
It was incredible. I'm still impressed by it. He was able to guess exactly how many Iron Man Mark suits there are in the cinematic universe.
The entirety of the MCU. And that will be 85. Iron Man in the MCU has had 85 versions of his Mark suit.
And he counted through it in his brain, and he was like, all right, let me do it. So now it's one of those highlights in the show.
I've gone downhill since then, guys. So if you listen to our pods and you listen to me do pop quizzes, I suck at them.
It's so funny. Monumental. So I have one for you today. Are you ready?
No.
For your first live pop quiz?
Not really. I'm about to embarrass myself in front of a lot of people right now.
Okay, here we go. So this, unfortunately, is not Marvel affiliated at all. It is a Hollywood-based question. But you're a film guy. Maybe you'll catch. I don't know. I'm having faith here. I have hope. So,
it's one of us.
So, among the following films, which was not filmed here at NHMLA? Was it multi-choice? So you don't have to worry about it too hard. You got 1 in 4 chance. Which film was not filmed here? Was it Pretty Woman.
Shout out to John Hughes.
John Hughes. Gone with the Wind.
The really old film?
The building was built in 1913.
I know, but...
Gone with the Wind came out in 1932, I think.
So just a little before my time. Just a little bit. Okay.
Sharknado 3.
I haven't watched Sharknado 2.
Or Escape from the Planet of the Apes, which was not filmed here. I see people are thinking about it.
I've only seen one of these movies.
Well, use the power of deduction.
Anyone out there in the crowd know the answer?
Look,
Go
this
ahead.
kid right here. Sharknado?
Sharknado 3 was not... If that was filmed here, I'd be really mad.
Would you eat your hat? It's a Spider-Man hat, so I'm really putting pressure on him. Come on, Jeff. He says Sharknado.
This feels like a
Anybody else?
Like a
Anybody
trick
else want to help
question.
him? It could be a trick question. I don't know. Why would I do that?
I know there's a lot of NHM workers here who show me your filming permits now, please.
All right. Pretty
Oh
Woman.
gosh.
Gone with the Wind.
I'm gonna go with my gut. I'm gonna go with Sharknado.
Sharknado 3 was not filmed here.
Was not
Jeffrey?
filmed here.
You're incorrect.
What? It was filmed here?
Yes. There are some building shots from Sharknado 3 that was filmed here in the museum, if you can believe it. So, Pretty Woman was also filmed here.
Oh, okay. I was going to say it's Pretty Woman.
Yeah, well, I definitely remember that one because it's also the exterior building of the 1913 building when they're going to the opera.
Oh.
And they're going up the steps.
It's been a while since I've seen that movie.
It's supposed to be Manhattan, but it's...
Oh, but they used the
exterior of the museum. It might have been these ones too. I'm not sure. It's one of the steps.
That's
so
funny.
Pretty Woman was also filmed here.
Okay.
Escape from the Planet of the Apes, also filmed here. And so that was actually shot here in the dueling dino area of the Grand Foyer.
Okay. So
Yeah.
it's Gone with the Wind.
So it's Gone with the Wind.
I should have gone with my gut.
I see what you did there.
Oh my gosh.
Sharknado.
Who has seen Gone with the Wind here though? Who remembers the whole movie? Oh, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, but it's surprising though, right? It's just like the Spider-Man scene. Like you really wouldn't...
It's like a if you know type of thing.
Exactly.
It's like
Exactly.
that Leonardo DiCaprio meme from Hollywood. Oh, there.
Yep.
Nope.
Yep. Exactly. That's exactly right. So we're going to move on to a semi-related topic. So if anyone has actually looked at our table, we have 3 examples of comic book grading. If you want to come up later on after we finish the main topics of the show and kind of give a guess of what you think each book is worth, come on down. We'd love to talk to you. But having access to the museum as I do,
Yeah.
I wanted to see if there was actually any comic books in the museum collections, because why wouldn't they, right? And so the museum has a special sector called the Seaver Center of Western History Research. And so all of the 2-dimensional paper, magazines, all of those items can be found in the Seaver Center. And so it's a very unsuspecting portion of the museum. It's not available for the public access, but you can go in, you can check out things from LA history. And so I asked Miss Betty Uyeda, the collections manager for the Museum Seaver Center, about comic books in the collection, because I was just ready to go down there and be like, can I see everything? And unfortunately, they have 0 comic books whatsoever. And
Really?
So, yeah.
Like none at all.
I was super surprised because I thought for sure, like
at least one.
like one really
Like one super rare one that just never going to be sold.
Spider-Man's first
It's
appearance.
just-
Amazing Fantasy. Yeah.
Wow.
Nothing. And so I asked her what they did have. And so actually, if you're sticking around, they're down in the Otis Booth Pavilion, the Seaver Center. So you can go down, see some of the collectibles that they brought. And so they only have, I believe, like posters from Batman Forever. And so
George Clooney?
yes. It might be Returns. I don't know. It's one of the Batman films, the modern ones.
Okay.
And so that's all they have as far as superheroes go. But the collection itself, she told me that they had a box full of magazines called Famous Monsters of Filmland. And they're all black and white interiors. They have a comic book format of sorts. And then they had one thing that she actually designated a comic book called Adventures in Disneyland, published by this company called the Richfield. And I think she identified that it was an oil company. So it must have been a promotion of sorts.
Interesting.
That Disney did with this oil company. And that's in the Walt Disney collection of our items. And then we have several comic strip engraving plates. And so she mentioned that these were likely newspapers, including engraving plates from Mickey Mouse and Silly Symphonies from 1933, and an Al Cap comic strip engraving plate from 1988. So that kind of gives you some idea of what they're actually they've collected or what
your collection has the museum beat. I've seen her collection, guys.
Oh my god,
it's insane.
It's intense. It kind of looks like Golden Apple over there, a little bit. But
you might have them beat too.
Oh god! And so, and of course, last but not least, they had a Mickey Mouse related newspaper comic strip from the 1930s, as well as something called His Christmas Pudding newspaper clipping from the Los Angeles Examiner, and that was mounted, and it's from 1903. So, speaking of collections, I actually offered to donate a book from my collection to the museum's collection. And it's, if anybody knows anything about our museum, we have sister museums as well. So NHMLA is one, and then we also have the La Brea Tar Pits, and the Heart Museum is kind of still related in some way. But I wanted to donate this very specific comic book. I wish I'd brought it, actually.
Oh.
I forgot to get it out, but it's Daredevil number 66 from 1970, and it involves Daredevil getting into trouble at the La Brea Tar Pits. And so it features there are no woolly mammoths at the tar pits, just FYI.
No real ones? Well, then why are we here?
Woolly mammoths were not found here in this locality, but we had just regular Colombian mammoths and mastodons. And so it's scientifically inaccurate, but it does take place at that site, and on the cover, it's so dramatic.
Gotcha.
It's from 1970, so it's like Daredevil in his suit, and he's like sinking into the tar pits, and the woolly mammoth is in the background, like, eh? And it's like a murder mystery of sorts. And so I offered to donate it to the museum. They're reevaluating it, not sure if it runs course as far as the relevance go or the values. So we'll see. We'll see if they take it. Like,
what's the process of that?
And that's exactly why I offered, because I wanted to see and understand how they process things that are donated, right? And so what better way to do it than with something like a comic?
Exactly.
Yeah. And so hopefully they'll accept it. If not, then I'm sure she'll be willing to share with me.
You could be the first Marvel comic.
That's what I'm saying. That's so cool, right?
That's a cool thing to have on your belt. I
agree. Yeah. So we'll see if they take it. But yeah, be sure to go check out the Seaver Center down in the Otis Booth Pavilion. So it's basically the building that's clear, and it has the giant fin whale skeleton floating above it.
Nice.
So that's more or less.
It's mostly
the history that we have here at NHMLA with superheroes. Awesome. Yeah. For our next episode, so again, this is deviating from our usual discussions.
Yeah.
We usually do character studies, so
we know you don't want to hear us talk for 2 hours right now.
We get really deep in the weeds with stuff.
Like, you'd be like, when are these people landing, man? Like, keep it short, sweet, and then talk to you guys after this.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, with Spider-Verse out, and it's so massively popular. We have Spider-Gwen here at the end of the table. It's only right that for our next episode, we're going to dive into the world of Miles Morales, Spider-Man. So stay tuned for that in about 2 weeks or so.
Yes.
But yeah.
I still have to see the movie.
Yeah, you better get on it, man.
I'm a fake fan.
Fake fan. Yeah. So with that said, thanks for listening, and thanks for joining us on site. If you'd like to talk to us after we're officially done recording this episode, please do so. We'd love to feature you in the episode itself.
Yeah.
And as all episodes end, a We Are Groot salute to our Patreon patrons of the Groot tier. Eve, Tyler, Andrew, the Arachnid, Jenny, Ed, Robin, Andrea, Melanie, Joliz, Sherry, Ariel, Katie, Laura, Nats, Ashley, and Claire. Follow us on social at STRK, CNTRST, and if you like what you hear, review, rate, and subscribe.
Thank you guys for joining us. We will catch you in the next one.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.
Whoa. Buddy, love the new outfit. This is exactly what I need to scoop Parker. Give me some of that web action.
See you, chump.